Another member of Congress making news, member of the squad, so-called squad, Representative Ilhan Omar. So the House GOP pressing a motion now to remove her from the House Foreign Affairs Committee over her recent, quote, crimes against humanity comments. So she wrote in a tweet, quote, "We must have the same level of accountability and justice for all victims of crimes against humanity. We have seen unthinkable atrocities committed by the U.S., Hamas, Israel, Afghanistan, and the Taliban." She later said that she was referencing cases before the International Criminal Court while in conversation with Secretary of State Antony Blinken, but did not point to specific examples of American and Israeli atrocities or crimes against humanity. But while Republicans want to remove her, many Democrats, like House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, refuse to condemn her comments and say her clarification is sufficient. Robert, are Republicans right to press here to remove her from her committee duties when you think about you mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene was removed from her committees for some of the comments that she made even after she apologized?
Well, let's understand. There's not a intellectual comparison between the two. Marjorie Taylor Greene compared wearing a mask to the Holocaust. I think that's very different than Ilhan Omar pointing out that there are cases against the United States before the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity that are being addressed at both at G7 this week and by Secretary Blinken on the international stage. And yes, any victims of crimes against humanity, whether it be at the hands of any organization or nation across the globe, should have these same rights in the International Criminal Court to have those things addressed. So maybe she should not be putting these things in tweet. Maybe these seem to be in a full press conference where there's less of a chance of your statements being taken out of context and where there's less of a chance of you having to go back and make retractions or corrections later on. But I don't think there's any comparison between the two. And I do think we have to address the way the United States is viewed in the international community with regards to human rights and some of the complaints that are made by Middle Eastern countries and Southeast Asian countries with regards to double standards as they see it in the European courts.
Tim, am I reading this wrong? Was she not making a comparison when she puts U.S. in the same sentence as Hamas and Israel?
You're absolutely right. She compared America and Israel to terrorist organizations, suggesting that we are on the same level as actual terrorist organizations who are currently performing acts of terror to individual people around the world. So it's an utterly ridiculous comparison. And this notion that, okay, so the U.S. is having cases on some criminal court of appeals, international. Okay, wait a second. For what? What are we talking about? Because if you're talking about maybe under President Trump, where he targeted known terrorists who actually were doing major death and destruction, like we're still not on the same level of comparison. The U.S. is not guilty of the same level of any kind of crimes or terrorism these other nations are. And let's also be clear, Ilhan Omar is known for being anti-Semitic. So it's not surprising at all that she would be very anti-Israel, anti-Jewish in some of these regards. And this is her known positions. This is not a new thing for her, but for her to compare.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. We're just getting tight on time. So, the big question is, should she be removed?
At this point, if you think America is a terrorist organization, Israel's a terrorist organization, if you are confused on that level of moral clarity, you probably don't need to be on committees where you're making decisions that might involve a level of morality if you're this confused.